The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the show. It's Thursday. I talked yesterday really briefly about George Zimmerman obtaining an additional attorney, Hal Uhrig, a guy who is much more known, Lewis, for... What is he known for? He is known for criminal defense, essentially, which may suggest that George Zimmerman is going to be charged soon. And now we actually have already an interview, Lewis, that this new attorney has done with Piers Morgan. Here's what he had to say yesterday. I want to get right into it, and we'll get our reactions.
That Trayvon Martin is dead. His parents are suffering unimaginable grief. That grief is not being helped by people coming to town telling falsehoods in order to raise racial strife. The morning of February 26th, we had a peaceful community where blacks and whites went to church together, stood in line at the grocery together, and didn't think that we had a problem. After some folks...
First of all, is he right about that? Is he right that there were just no indications at all of racial strife? I mean, George Zimmerman himself had called the police. How many times did we hear about at this point, Lewis? Certainly over 40, possibly into triple digits over the last couple of years. Many of those calls related to, no question about it, people of different races that he thought were up to no good. So I don't know that it's... I think Hal Uhrig's own client is evidence that things were not just completely... empty of racial strife the entire time.
No, but it's still something that can be hard to prove.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
He's not saying anything that could be definitively disproven. Let's go back to the video and audio of the new Zimmerman attorney.
Folks came to town and had their little rallies and made irresponsible speeches about murder and racial profiling. He's not a racist. It wasn't profiling. The reason that Trayvon Martin is dead is not because he was black or because he wore a hoodie or because he was walking in the rain. It's because that 6'3" young man made a terrible decision and a bad judgment. And
okay, 6'3". Coded language, guys. Why is he mentioning that he's 6'3"? To dispel the narrative that this was just a little kid who was defenseless, even though he weighed 100 pounds or more or less than George Zimmerman. This is coded language to bring up ideas of the big, scary black guy. That's the only reason why he would say he's 6'3". Any disagreement from you guys?
Absolutely not.
Natan? Natan's mic's not even on. Let's see if we can hear Natan this time.
Yeah, you're totally right.
There we go. Okay, so bringing up, even though he says this has nothing to do with race, using very coded racial language here, let's continue with Hal Uhrig on the Piers Morgan Show, George Zimmerman's new attorney.
Decided to smack somebody in the face and break their nose, jump on them and smack their head into the ground, and in doing that, put him in reasonable fear for his safety.
Right, so then let's analyze that part. We already saw the video of George Zimmerman being brought in by police. Had he obtained a broken nose during that altercation, Lewis? I don't know. I'm not an expert on broken noses. My question would be, so shortly after the incident, would George Zimmerman simply be walking around the way he was if he had obtained a broken nose, if he had been slammed on the pavement? The only thing we saw was maybe a shadow of a scar or cut on the back of George Zimmerman's head, which certainly was not actively bleeding. It wasn't even bandaged up.
Right. Still, we can't say with certitude that he was not injured, but unlikely, it seems unlikely.
If you have a broken nose, would it make sense that you're just walking around in that way with nothing showing on the nose, nothing visible on the nose? I mean, I really am not...
It's possible, yeah.
It's possible?
It is possible.
I mean, I just don't know enough.
It's possible that he might have been briefly treated by EMTs or whoever. The bleeding might have stopped. It is possible.
Okay. Natan, any thought on this? I mean, right here, even what Uhrig is saying here seems to be, again, is this even legal language that could be arbitrarily true, or is he just saying things that are flat out false?
Well, is there any evidence at all, apart from Zimmerman's testimony, that Trayvon Martin laid a hand on him at any point in the altercation?
We don't yet know. When we see the autopsy report and we can see whether there is any DNA of Zimmerman's under Trayvon's nails, that may shed some light onto this. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we're waiting for, but I don't think at this point we have anything that we could call evidence that proves that Trayvon Martin inflicted any kind of injury onto George Zimmerman.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that what this guy is saying is just remains to be seen whether it's true or not.
All right, and here's the end of this clip.
You're going to find that there was a dispute as to what happened with the gun. He was absolutely entitled to defend himself, and that's why Trayvon Martin is dead, not because of racial profiling.
Well, I've not suggested racial profiling, or that your client was a racist, nor indeed am I trying to convict him. or taking a side. My view.
Okay, so there's more from Piers Morgan. So, Lewis, very clear path that this is taking. We see George Zimmerman initially have this lawyer, Craig Sonner, who seemed completely unequipped to handle the magnitude of the situation with George Zimmerman. We now see him bringing in as co-counsel Hal Uhrig, who has much more experience with criminal defense, seems to be much more aggressive in these interviews, is not shying away from interviews, at least as far as we've seen in the first 24 to 48 hours of his hiring by George Zimmerman. A question I have is, where is George Zimmerman during all of this? Both attorneys indicating that they've been communicating with Zimmerman via phone. And I actually am legitimately curious, physically, where is George Zimmerman? He probably is hiding somewhere, right?
Remember, there's a bounty on his head.
Right, yeah, from the new Black Panther Party. So we'll see what happens. Lewis, you still think that we will see charges against Zimmerman?
It seems to be headed in that direction, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.